Like I mentioned before, on today's show, I have Roger Stone. Scratch that, Roger fucking Stone. We talk about his book, The Clintons' War on Women, his new podcast that premieres tomorrow, and you can check that out at stonecoldtruth.com. And, of course, we talk about Trump. So please, check out my conversation with Roger Stone right now.
He wrote the book because in the 1980s, when the Clintons were in their heyday, the media was much less diverse than it is today. This is before the maturation of the internet, before the full power of talk radio. Cable still didn't have the influence that it has today. So essentially, we had three national television networks and a veritable handful of national newspapers. Therefore, if something didn't happen in those news organs, it didn't happen at all. The Clintons were very, very adept at suppressing news one of two ways, either because the news organizations were ideologically aligned with the agenda of the Clintons, or by discrediting any source that came forward to expose their corruption or their activities. So, for example, when Juanita Broaddrick, who was raped by Bill Clinton in 1978, raped and bitten, raped twice, came forward to tell her detailed story, not only about being assaulted by Bill, but then being directly threatened by Hillary to keep her mouth shut. NBC conducted that interview only because the journalist Lisa Myers insisted on developing the story. Then the interview sat in the can for 1 year, all the way through Clinton's impeachment trial, in fact, and did not finally air until after the impeachment vote. None of the other networks even bothered with the story. They had no interest. So I thought it was very important for people to get the full lowdown on Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton. And incredibly, my book, The Clintons' War on Women, is a true story of sexual assault, rape, cover-up, violence against women, bullying, drug use, drug trafficking, incredible corruption, as well as some of the Clinton family's deep family secrets. It's timely because people need to understand that Hillary she's not a progressive. She's not a liberal. She's a crony capitalist. She'll do anything for money. The big banks control her largely. She is a creature of Wall Street, despite the fact that she tries to sound like Bernie Sanders when it comes to, regulatory issues. So it's important that people know how completely dysfunctional and phony the Clinton marriage is, why this is a cash and carry business, and of course the epic corruption of the Clinton Foundation, the largest criminal money laundering operation in U.S. history.
Now, when we talk about corruption, I think a lot of people, a lot of young Trump supporters they were kind of aware, because when it comes to Hillary Clinton and all her scandals and all the bodies in the closet, it's kind of hard to, there's so much of it, it's kind of hard to kind of parse out what's important, what's not important. But I think a lot of people were shocked by, a lot of new Trump supporters were shocked by the corruption that the DNC leaks showed with the Clinton and the Clinton camp. Were you shocked at all, or when you saw those leaks and you read some of that stuff, were you just like, this is more of the same?
Yeah, nothing the Clintons do would surprise me, having done the research on this book, having interviewed 27 women who've been sexually assaulted by Bill and threatened by Hillary. Look, the mainstream media would like the Clintons' sexual foibles, first of all, to be about marital infidelity or adultery or girlfriends or mistresses. I guess on the theory that you could say, well, okay, Bill stepped out, but and so did Donald Trump. Well, between his marriages, yes. But that's not the issue here at all. This isn't about marital infidelity or adultery or consensual sex. I'm a libertarian. I don't really care about Bill Clinton and consensual sex. He's probably been with thousands of women. My point is something far darker. Bill is, like Bill Cosby, a sexual predator. And he has assaulted numerous credible women who have come forward. Others have been browbeat and threatened and bullied so much that they feared coming forward. Some of them will come forward now who didn't come forward in the 80s. So the fact that the Clintons would cheat to win the Democratic nomination is not at all surprising. I agree with you that one of the great issues here is that younger voters particularly have no frame of reference for the Clintons. They weren't around in the 80s. They don't remember Monica and the blue dress. They don't remember Travelgate or Whitewater or Waco or any number of scandals in which the Clintons were deeply enmeshed and escaped the bullet. I don't think that's going to happen again. I think the Clinton Foundation will, in the end, be their downfall.
Do you think with the Clinton Foundation that? How bad do you think I know the rumors are that there's money from Saudis, and I know people have talked about Assange has kind of left kind of clues as to what could possibly be in there. We hear that there might be a video with some Saudis and her aide. I know you wouldn't be shocked by any of it, but how deep do you think it really runs? Is this going to be something that could torpedo her campaign, or do you think this is just going to be something that's going to be embarrassing, egg on the face, and she'll just keep moving past it?
Let's remember that the Clintons' response to all of the allegations surrounding pay to play at the Clinton Foundation has been, "You have no proof." Not we didn't do it, because it's clear they took in millions of dollars from a Russian concern, and then they systematically turned over control of the majority of the U.S. uranium production to that company. They're arguing you can't prove that those two things are related. You can't prove the quid pro quo. Well, I believe Julian Assange, who I think is a hero of fighting the police state, has all of the emails that Huma and Cheryl Mills, the two Clinton aides, thought that they had erased. Now, if there's nothing damning or problematic in those emails, I assure you the Clintonites wouldn't have erased them and taken the public heat for doing so. The point, of course, is that I don't think they are erased. I think Assange has them. I know he has them. And I believe he will expose the American people to this information, in the next 90 days. I think that is exceedingly problematic. He's already proven that she armed ISIS through the documents that he has, and that is a problem for them as well.
When a whistleblower like Assange starts to release this information, I know the left, would say that, he's got an axe to grind, or that it's personal for him. But can it be both? Do you think he can be a truth crusader and have an axe to grind too? Or what would you speculate his motive is with this information that he's leaking?
Well, it's interesting that prior to the release of the DNC heist emails, and prior to his offering a reward in connection with the death of this fellow
Seth Rice,
his last name. Yes, Seth Rice, who was working at the DNC and was tragically murdered. And on the heels of Assange releasing evidence that Hillary did, in fact, knowingly arm ISIS, now suddenly there's a giant online effort to discredit Assange. So the liberals thought Assange was great until now. Now we're going to try to discredit him. It's all being done by this David Brock operation. Correct the record. They can do anything but. It's a group of Hillary sycophants who constantly churn out disinformation. And nothing Assange has put forward since the formation of WikiLeaks has proven to be false or fabricated. I suspect that he may have some information on Donald Trump as well. I don't think he's a partisan, but I think he is shocked by the level of corruption of the Clintons.
Do you think this information that does come out, do you think it'll hurt her in any way, or do you think it'll deter her in any way, or do you think she'll just keep pressing
Well,
on?
that's kind of up to Donald Trump. I mean, do I think that the mainstream media will underreport this and try to poo-poo it? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's essential for Trump to pick up the cudgels and drive each one of these issues. See, that's really, I think, the Clintons' greatest fear. In Donald Trump, you have an unguided missile who will go anywhere. If Hillary Clinton accuses him in a debate of being misogynist, I would predict that Trump will point out that Bill's a serial rapist, but what you did to those women, Hillary, that's even worse. That's their worst nightmare. They've always been able to suppress this. There's so many questions that, Hillary has managed to avoid that need to be asked.
Do you think Donald Trump will I mean, looking from the outside looking in, you go, well, he's brought it up before in some speeches and in off-the-cuff talks. Do you think he would actually bring this up at the debate? I mean, this is great ammo. I mean, this is ammo that none of her opponents have ever used against her. And it's
Well, the only thing predictable about Donald Trump is that he's entirely unpredictable. So anything, in my view, is possible in terms of the issues he may raise.
Now, as someone who's seen this game for a long time, who kind of knows about politics, I know I hear a lot of people on the right, a lot of Trump supporters. There's some that are kind of like apologists. They're like, I wish Donald Trump would stop saying this because it gets spun in the mainstream media. It gets turned around on him. Would there be any benefit? I don't think there would be, but do you think there would be any benefit of him toning it down? It seems like even if, no matter what he says, it's going to get taken out of context. Any joke he makes is going to get taken out of context. Is there any incentive for him to tone it down, or should he be getting stronger as we move along?
Look, Trump will be Trump. The idea that he can handle him or manipulate him or program him or script him just isn't going to happen. I do think that he has never run for public office before, that he is still in the process of learning more and more how this works. And therefore, I think he will instinctively be a bit more cautious on his own. But at the juncture that Trump stops being Trump, well, then we'll stop voting for him because he'll be boring. And the only thing worse in politics than being wrong is being boring. And Donald Trump is never boring. So I think he's got to stay on the attack. This election's not about Donald Trump. Donald Trump's party has not been in power for 8 years. Hillary Clinton's election would merely be the continuation of what we have now. So if you think the country is strong and prosperous, if you think we're at peace and the jobs are plentiful, if you see your family doing better, then you should vote for her. Not many people, I think, are going to reach that conclusion.
Now, with Trump and his supporters, I don't even know how you would describe this movement. I'm wondering what you think of this movement with these Trump supporters, because they're conservative on a lot of issues. They're kind of would be labeled more progressive on other issues when it comes to gay rights and human rights and things like that. So when we look at the Trump and his supporters, how would you describe this movement? I know some people would say they're saying Trumplicans or paleoconservatives. I mean, you have a stronger understanding of a history of kind of conservatism in America. How would you kind of describe what this movement is, or is it still kind of ongoing?
Well, first of all, let's recognize that Trump's nomination is the hostile takeover of the Republican Party. Trump recognized in 2000 that you had to be the nominee of one of the major parties to get elected. He did flirt with the idea of running as a Reform Party candidate, a third-party candidate in 2000, and we looked very hard at it. I was the chairman of that exploratory committee, as a matter of fact, but it was just too tall a mountain to climb. First of all, you had the problem of ballot access, the difficulty of getting on the ballot in 50 states, but then secondarily, you had the problem of getting in the debates. The Presidential Commission on Debates is not appointed by the president, is not a commission, and is not about debate. It's about limiting debate to the Republicans and Democrats only. So Trump's coalition is very different than the Republican coalition. And therein lies the rub. It's in Trump's interest, for example, in states like Michigan and Ohio, to turn out certain union voters who are for Trump but will probably vote the Democratic ticket down ballot. It is not in the interest of the Republican Party or the National Republicans to turn out those voters. So you have an immediate conflict. The Trump voter is a more populist voter. But the most interesting thing about Trump's candidacy is that he is bringing new people to the process. No political figure in recent years, other than Obama, has been able to motivate new people to come to the process. Certainly no Republican. So in Florida, for example, Donald Trump got 375,000 more votes than Mitt Romney in the Republican primary for president. That's an extraordinary number because both Romney and Trump won in their respective years. If you examine those 375,000 voters to try to determine who they are, you learn that roughly half of them were new voters, people who never voted before. And the other half were by and large people who were registered but did not vote 2 years ago or 4 years ago. So people that Trump has brought back to the process. Most of these people probably left because they decided our elections the system was rigged, not the election so much as the system. And it didn't really matter who they voted for because everything pretty much remained the same.
When you look at, like, I know Nealon lost, but there are other candidates like Kelly Ward out in Arizona who's trying to unseat McCain. I mean, is this idea of populism that Trump has been championing that's kind of grown to where it is now, and it seems to just keep growing and growing? Is this going to really? I mean, to your point, the hostile takeover of the Republican Party, is this going to continue? Is this going to catch fire? Is the Republican Party? Do you think they're ready for this kind of drastic makeover?
Well, the problem, of course, is that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party have morphed into the same party. The whole rise of Trump is a rejection of 30 years of bipartisan bad decision-making. The policies of the Clintons and the policies of the Bushes are essentially identical in every area, particularly in the area of foreign policy. They're all neocons who would march us off to war. They are all responsible working together for the erosion of our civil liberties through the Patriot Act. It was bipartisan votes that got us bailouts for the swindlers and the crooks on Wall Street. So you have a movement here in which many in the Republican Party have figured out that the leadership of the party uses these hot button issues like immigration or the Second Amendment or spending or taxes or trade to get our dollars. They use it to raise money, but then they go to Washington and they work in a coalition with the Democrats. So I don't view this election so much as Republicans versus Democrats as much as I view it as outsiders versus insiders.
Do you think there was ever? I mean, I know we look at the election like that. I know a lot of people looked at. I know that everyone wants to paint themselves as an outsider, but and you've known Trump for a number of years. I mean, he really is the ultimate political outsider. I mean, a real outsider when we talk about outsiders.
With the advantage of being a billionaire. And with the advantage of having 100% name ID. Everybody knew who Donald Trump was when this race began. Mm-hmm. So although he's a billionaire, he's not an elitist. He does not hang out at the country club. He does not, his friends are not the guys down on Wall Street. He would rather spend his time with the masons and the carpenters and the electricians working on his buildings than with the hoi polloi down on Wall Street. Remember, Trump made his money in bricks and mortar. He didn't make his money in, toxic mortgage-backed securities.
Do you think a Trump presidency? So if Trump wins, and then we have a Republican-controlled House and a Republican-controlled Senate, do you think there's going to be a lot of push and pull between Trump and like a traditional Republican-controlled Congress, or do you think there'll be?
No, there shouldn't be, because as you saw with Reagan, most of the Republicans in the Congress opposed Reagan's nomination also. But I believe that Trump would put forward a program that was so popular, particularly with Republicans, that those members of Congress would be forced to run out ahead of the parade so they can look like a leader. Remember that if you're a Republican in Congress, your number one objective is to get reelected.
Yeah.
If the president and his proposals and his policies are popular, then you will latch on to them. If they are unpopular, you will fight them. I expect them to be popular because we're at a flashpoint here. We're broke. We're going deeper in debt. We're borrowing and spending more. Our foreign policy is entirely incoherent, but it appears to be to undermine your allies everywhere possible and insert your enemies in power when you can, which is exactly what we've done in the Middle East. We have got to seal our border, or the horde of Muslim thugs that have been marauding through France and Germany. You will see that same phenomena here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I don't expect that. I think once Trump is elected, he would get support. I go so far as to say if this election goes as I think it was, those who are fleeing Donald Trump now will be seeking desperately to get on the platform with him in October.
Well, to that point, when we talk about people who are kind of fleeing Donald Trump, or even the people here on the right, these never Trumpers, the ones who seem to not want this to happen, even after the fact that we've nominated him, that this is going to happen, that this could likely win. I mean, you look at these rally crowds versus her rally crowds. I mean, I know there's data out there in the media, but I kind of think it's been manipulated personally, just because everything else has been manipulated. But I mean, when we hear these never Trumpers, we hear prominent conservatives, or people who claim to be conservatives, and yet they're taking every opportunity to bash Donald Trump. Are they enabling Hillary Clinton, or do they just not get it? I mean, what do you think it is?
No, they get it, but they recognize that the policies of Hillary Clinton are identical to the policies of their friends, the Bushes. They like the status quo. Look at how many of the never Trumpers wear the second hat of lobbyist.
Mm-hmm.
That's a telling number.
Or pundit,
Trump strikes fear in the heart of the K Street, Wall Street combine. My God, a president we can't buy, a president who's not interested in our campaign contributions, a president we have no influence with. That's the worst of all worlds. And the fact that he would bring fundamental change, that we would no longer be out looking for wars to get into. I don't think Trump's an isolationist by any means, but I do think he's a non-interventionist. He's not a neocon, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
He opposed the Iraq War, and he did oppose the Iraq War because I was there. And I think he would be very, very cautious about sending troops abroad. Now, does that not mean that he would, as he said, bomb the hell out of ISIS? Yes. But I think first he'd like to reach a period of détente with the Soviet Union, or the former Soviet Union. It is the Clinton-Obama policies that have brought us to the brink of war with Russia. Trump favors a period of hard-headed détente and negotiation to see if we can't get together with them to fight our common enemy, ISIS, which they're doing a better job of today. So Trump is not only the law and order candidate, he's also the peace candidate. Hillary, as a neocon, I suspect she favors war with Russia. At least that's what Putin thinks.
You know, you've seen a lot of conventions. One of the things I want to point out, I mean, when we talk about her as a neocon, I mean, when we looked at the Democratic National Convention, I mean, and this is the Democratic National Convention, you had people chanting, you know, we want peace, and they were being drowned out with a chant of USA, USA, USA. Now, this is on the floor of the Democratic National Convention. I mean, these people are, I mean, the same people who, the same Democrats who ostracized Bush are kind of propping up a candidate who's almost George W. Bush in a skirt, or a pantsuit in her case.
Which is why real progressives should not vote for Hillary Clinton. If I were a Bernie supporter today, I would cast my vote for Jill Stein. I might even cast my vote for the Libertarian candidate, Gary Johnson. Either one of them would be preferable. I think Hillary kind of had the Bernie folks tamped down pretty good until the WikiLeaks that proved just how egregious the steal from Bernie was. Now I think progressives should be highly motivated to not vote for Hillary.
Well, let me ask you.
They will try to use the specter of Donald Trump to get those voters back in line, but I would point out that on issues of war and issues of trade, Trump is preferable to Trump is closer to Bernie Sanders than he is to Hillary Clinton.
Now, let me ask you this. Now, you've been on the record as being someone who's left the Republican Party to become a libertarian, and this is an election because of Clinton and who she is. Is it prudent? I mean, I would never dismiss anyone's personal belief. I mean, everyone has to vote their conscience, and that's a true thing. But knowing what we're up against with Hillary Clinton, if you're a voter in Michigan or a swing state, New Mexico, or a state where it could really, really matter, what would be your opinion on voting for someone like Gary Johnson when you know that we're up against this rock and hard place between Hillary Clinton and all the things that she would bring to the Supreme Court, to war with Russia, to everything?
Well, first of all, let me say I left the Republican Party, to which I had a huge sentimental attachment. I was a young Republican national chairman from 1977 to 1979. I have worked on a senior staff level in 9 Republican presidential campaigns. Richard Nixon was my mentor. Ronald Reagan was my boss in 3 campaigns, the work I'm proudest of. I worked for that great patriot, Bob Dole. I was pressed into service for the first Bush, something I later regretted. So I have a sentimental attachment to the Republican Party, but that's the old Republican Party of Barry Goldwater, the party of small government, the party of less spending, the party of strong national defense, the party of sound fiscal policies, the party of hard money. That party doesn't exist anymore. We've become the Wall Street Party. We've become the Bush's party, notwithstanding the rejection of Jeb Bush. So I left the Republican Party because of that. Now I understand that the Libertarian Party is wooing the Bushes and the Romneys. Well, this may be the perfect time for me to go back to the Republican Party, because I left because of the Romney-Bush control, and they no longer control the party. In the state of Florida, where I live, voter registration, changing parties is not that simple. So I was a libertarian at the time of the Florida Republican primary. If I change parties sometime between now and November, my party registration will not become valid until next year.
Oh.
They do that so people can't switch parties to vote in the other party primary to create mischief. That's the essential purpose of that. So I may just be coming home to the new Republican Party of Donald Trump, which is not a Wall Street party. It's the Main Street Party. It's the party of working people, and a party returning to its roots.
Now, I know when you see...
And let me say this. I have the highest possible regard for Gary Johnson. I supported him and worked for him 4 years ago. I played a significant role in helping get him on the ballot in 48 states. Bill Weld, his running mate, is also a friend of mine. I take nothing away from Gary Johnson. He's a fine man with a terrific record. But it's interesting to me that as hard as we worked 4 years ago, we could get no media attention at all. CNN was just not interested. Now, because the mainstream media perceives that Johnson may be taking votes from Trump, well, he's everywhere.
Yeah, now he gets a town hall. Yeah, it's
and, he's everywhere, and I think it's hard for Gary, who's a very good man, to be the reform candidate in this race, because Trump is already the reform candidate. I mean, if you're looking for an insurgent, Trump is the insurgent. That said, I think it's crucial that Gary Johnson, the Libertarian, and Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate, be in the debates. It is outrageous if they are excluded. Debate participation should be based on the number of states on which you're on the ballot. If you're on the ballot in a sufficient number of states to theoretically reach 270 electoral votes, you should be allowed in the debate. Not based on some phony poll number that's probably manipulated anyway. I know virtually every one of the board members of the committee for the Presidential Commission on Debates. And if they set a threshold, let's say at 15%, and a Johnson or a Stein were to reach that number, they'll simply change it to 20. And then if they have to, they'll change it to 25. This is about keeping other voices out of the debate. I just think it's inherently unfair.
Now, let me ask you this, going back just a step, because some of us who are like myself, you, old enough to remember the 80s, we're old enough to remember Ronald Reagan. And it's kind of, well, it's not funny, but it's actually kind of sad, the fact that we have from when that ended to onwards, and even especially in the 2000s, everyone talks about Morning in America. Everyone talks about being a Reagan Republican, but they don't really seem to understand what that means. Or I'm a Goldwater Republican. I know McCain says that in my home state of Arizona, and I wonder, I'm like, which Goldwater is he talking about, and which Ronald Reagan is Rubio talking about when he's talking about Morning in America? Because they seem pretty oblivious to the idea of, or even a history book of what Ronald Reagan was really about, especially when we talk about the Big Tent Party. But with Trump, would you say he's more like Ronald Reagan, or would you say he's kind of his own entity, or are there shades of Reagan in his campaign and his movement?
There's definitely shades of Reagan, because he has the same cross appeal to blue-collar Democrats that Reagan had that Romney did not have, for example. Because on the 5 or 6 big issues facing the country, Trump takes the reliably conservative position. By the way, there's no question John McCain was a Goldwater conservative when he first got to Congress, but today he's the senator from the District of Columbia.
Yeah, no kidding.
Nobody's taken more lobbyist money, but this recent payment of $20 million by the Saudis to the McCain Foundation, which is, if you look at it, a slush fund to pay his cronies, is disgraceful. No wonder he didn't want to unredact the 28 pages of the congressional inquiry into 9/11 that would embarrass the Saudis. No wonder he's defending the Saudis, Huma Abedin, and later this fellow Khan, both of whom can be traced to the most radical Islamic elements in Saudi. Again, both of whom can be traced to not only the World Muslim League, but the publication on Muslim minority affairs, all of which are funded by Sheikh Omar Abdul Nassif, the man identified by the U.S. Justice Department as having financed the attack on America on 9/11. So, I think John McCain is in the service of the Saudis. That $20 million probably bought quite a bit.
Are you familiar with Kelly Ward? I mean, I know she's in my home state. I've got a chance to just talk to her very, very briefly. And I think that if McCain were to be unseated, that would definitely send a strong message, in possibly not only for, maybe there's not enough of time in this cycle, but definitely in the midterms. Do you think someone like John McCain being called out and being unseated could kind of reverberate throughout the Republican Party?
No question. Look, first of all, I know Kelly Ward. I met her in Cleveland. I think very highly of her. And if I lived in Arizona, I assure you I would be voting for her. I think she's terrific. She's a real conservative. It is, I think, tragic that Donald was mowed into endorsing McCain. I was hoping he would endorse Ward. He owes McCain nothing whatsoever. But I've also seen polling in that race. McCain is not doing well for an incumbent, and she can definitely win. Now, of course, McCain is drowning in television money for the closing days, and Ward is underfunded. But nothing is impossible in this cycle. So I'm watching the race very closely. I
can tell you this, as a guy who's out in Arizona, I don't think there's ever been a stronger sentiment of an incumbent being so disliked than McCain is right now. I mean, there's always been pockets of people who didn't like McCain. I remember, I think it was Hayworth. I'm an Arizonian, I should know this, but there's always been people who've come at him, but it's never really stuck. And it seems like it's really sticking this time. And it seems like the base in Arizona, especially the Trump supporters, know that this could be the shot that gets everything started. Maybe not right now, but definitely in the midterms. And that these are the kind of politicians that we need.
He's a water carrier for the Saudis.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's switch topics. I want to ask you about your podcast, and I kind of want to ask you what your original motivation was. I know my motivation was just I was tired of looking out and seeing all these shows that were available on for on demand via podcasting. You had Katie Couric, and you had Bill Maher, and you even had the regular guys, but they were all just rehashed shows. I mean, they were rehashed TV shows when you look at Beck or you look at Hannity. So I mean, and it's important that there is its own medium to reach out to people. What kind of got you involved in the Stone Cold Truth, and what are you looking to do with your podcast?
Well, first of all, I got tired of doing radio shows with radio hosts that I knew more than. Yeah. So I was doing 6 and 7 radio shows today. I love radio. Radio is the reason my book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ, became a New York Times bestseller and is now sold about 250,000.
Great book, by the way.
That's all radio. Television doesn't really sell books. Cable doesn't really sell books, but radio sells books. So that's part of it. Secondarily, I don't want to be in a situation in which sponsors tell me, oh, you can't say that. Oh, you can't say that. No, that's uncomfortable for us. You can't say that. So by running your own podcast, in this case, The Stone Cold Truth, and our maiden radio show on the Genesis Network is actually tomorrow from 1 to 3, it allows you to say anything you want without being censored, which to me is very key. I have had a long time website, stonezone.com, which will continue. I'm also going to be doing commentary on stonecoldtruth.com. And both of them give me access that the mainstream media will not give me. As you probably know, I was banned by CNN for being politically incorrect. The truth is I was banned because I won't stop talking about Bill's assaults on women, his sexual assaults. Chris Cuomo, who works for CNN, asked Donald directly, why are you attacking Hillary for her husband's indiscretions? These are not indiscretions, they're rapes. Indiscretion is an affair, a pass, adultery. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm not a blue nose. I don't care. I'm sure that offends some people, many people, but I'm more concerned with violence against women, which Hillary has both condoned, covered up, and enabled.
Let me ask this, because I do want to go right back to the beginning of our conversation, because there is something interesting there to your point. When they talk about Bill Clinton, and even back in the 90s, and even to today, it kind of gets spun into this like, oh, it's hardy har har, he got a blowjob. Oh, how can people get so upset about a blowjob in the White House? He cheated on his wife. Like everyone tries to write this off like it's a joke. But there's something way, way, way more dark, way more evil. When you put the Monica Lewinsky thing aside and you start looking into this guy's past, I mean, if this was any guy in the world, if this was you or this was me, or if this was any guy who had a past like this and he was a prominent figure, he would be crucified at the stake. Am I right? I mean, it's
well,
pretty...
I would make 2 points. Notice that even though his relationship with Monica Lewinsky, who is literally 1/3 of his age, is consensual, Hillary still does the usual thing. She viciously attacks Lewinsky. She's a Looney Tune. She's a nut. She's a slut. It's her fault that Bill seduced her. It's the woman's fault. Hillary always attacks the women. When asked point blank about the women who have accused her husband of sexual assault, Hillary said those women will have something to answer for, as if it's their fault. So Hillary ran the campaign to discredit and destroy Lewinsky from her East Wing office. There is I've never understood why the special prosecutor, Ken Starr, didn't indict Bill for the selling of military secrets, specifically missile guidance technology, to the Chinese in return for illegal campaign contributions in a 3-way transaction. That is treason. That is what he should have been indicted for. instead of being indicted for, dallying with an intern in his office, actually, I guess he was really indicted for lying about that. But in truth, the Clintons have more serious crimes. I wrote a long piece on this for Breitbart on the theft of military secrets by the sale of military secrets by Bill Clinton.
Do you think if she loses, do the Clintons go away, or are they always going to be involved somehow? Are they always going to be, nibbling around the end? Are they going to go back to the public speeches? They can go back to collecting that sweet Wall Street money, or is there ever going to be a point?
They're worth a couple. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Are they ever going to go away?
Well, they're worth a couple $100 million combined, probably in excess now of $300 million. I mean, how much can you steal? Chelsea's paid $6 million a year to run the money laundering operation at the Clinton Foundation, which is really what it is. Once that is closely examined, there are more and more fabrications. There's almost no charitable works. About 10% of the money is actually spent on charitable works. The rest is spent to augment the lavish lifestyle of the Clintons or to warehouse, a phalanx of their flunkies. Chelsea makes noises about running for Congress in Westchester. She, of course, will write up to the questions about who is her real father. As I say in the Clintons' War on Women, I don't believe Bill Clinton is Chelsea's father. I believe Webster Hubbell, Hillary's former lover and former law partner, is Chelsea's father. You can go in the book and look at the photographs and see the compelling case that I make. There's a number of indications that this is the case. Why is it important? Because it just shows you how cold-blooded and dysfunctional this family really is. So they trot Chelsea out to defend them on the Clinton Foundation thievery. They use her as a political prop. I think it's important that people know who she really is.
Let me ask you this: if she loses, or when she loses, is the Democratic Party going to have the strength to take a look at itself and go, okay, well, we definitely, like if there's a 1980 Reagan-like sweep, Trump wins states that he shouldn't win. He carries the same states Romney carried previously, but he wins states that he shouldn't win, and it's a 1980-ish Reagan win. Does the Democratic Party look at itself and go, okay, well, we got problems, or do you think they double down on this idea of globalism?
No, the party will actually move left. The party will move populist left to a certain extent. I mean, I have many, many friends in the Democratic Party. I have friends who are for Hillary. It's not that they love Hillary or Bill. They're afraid not to be for Hillary. The Clintons are very vindictive and very nasty. And therefore, they have to go through the motions of being for Hillary, even though they have no enthusiasm for her candidacy.
There definitely is a lack of enthusiasm. I mean, you've seen some of her rallies. I know, especially this week, the pictures have been all over. People are finally starting to, the journalists who are there, the people who are covering her, are finally starting to take pictures besides the ones in the frame to make it look good. I mean, I should ask you this earlier, but when this polling data comes out and we hear nonsense like Trump is down by 10, do you believe any of this at all? Or do you think this is more data being manipulated by CNN and the mainstream media? I know people would go, oh, wow, that's tinfoil. That's pretty crazy, Mark. But I don't know. That's how I feel. What do you think?
It's very easy to manipulate the outcome of the poll without anybody understanding it by oversampling voters that are more likely to be for Hillary. On the other hand, Trump is taking a beating in the national press like nothing I've seen since the days of Barry Goldwater. Mm-hmm. So it is my guess is he's probably slightly behind right now, which is fine. This election isn't for 90 days. I don't expect to see a situation in which this ever turns out to be a runaway race on either side. In other words, I expect the polls to show them completely, within range. I think this race will always remain within range. At
the end of the day, do you think I'm maybe being a little bit too optimistic, thinking it'll be a 1980 Reagan-ish win, or do you think it'll be a lot closer than that?
Well, the Reagan win was much closer than perhaps you remember it. It was not the landslide that we remember, but the reason for that was, I think, because Carter had led pretty much up until the election, only falling behind in the final days, that we remember it as a big win. I think Trump will win a narrow race. And as I have written, I have a very strong concern that this election will be rigged, that this election will be stolen, not through voter fraud, because that voter fraud is in fact not non-existent, but relatively limited. I'm more concerned about the manipulation of these electronic computerized voting machines. They have been manipulated in the past by both parties, and they will be manipulated again if the Clintons have anything to do with it. I'm working on a long piece on this now. This is what we have to be concerned about.
I want to thank Roger Stone for joining us on MAGA Pod. What a great conversation. And please make sure to check out his podcast that is premiering this Saturday on the Genesis Network. Go to stonecoldtruth.com for more information. I believe it's premiering between 1 and 3 p.m. Eastern. Also, pick up Roger Stone's book, The Clintons' War on Women. That is available at Amazon.com or wherever books are sold. I don't know where books are sold anymore. Someone told me the other day that Borders doesn't exist anymore. I was like, hey, I'm going to go to Borders and spit in all the Hillary Clinton books. And they were like, hey, Borders doesn't even exist. You're going to have to go to Barnes & Noble. So I know there are bookstores out there. You can get it there. But, of course, if you're under 50, then maybe you can get it at Amazon.com. So, again, thank you, Mr. Stone, for joining us. I also want to have a few other people here to thank. The MAGA Pod team is growing. I want to thank show contributor Robert Mullen. I want to thank Ross the Colonel from _Donald over at Reddit. And, of course, Lee Dean, as always, for editing and producing and doing so much of the behind-the-scenes work that you guys don't necessarily see. You the real MVP, man. Thank you so much, Lee. I also want to thank everybody who listens to the show on Regated.com, or if you listen on our website at magapod.com. Or if you could, though, please subscribe on iTunes so you can check us out on iTunes, Stitcher, Podkicker, anywhere where you can get a podcast, you can get this show. So to wherever you're listening, thank you for listening. Please come to magapod.com. Because not only can you check out the show there, we have the show notes, but also if you really like the show, there is a blue donate button in the upper right-hand corner. So if you really like the show and you want to support us, you want to help us keep going all the way till the election, feel free to throw us a few bucks. So thank you so much, Trumpire. This is one of my favorites. Loved Roger Stone. Great conversation. Thank you all for so much of your support. Love you guys. Thank you. And until next time, stay nimble, navigators.